The courtroom whispered. Morning sun slipped through the tall windows of the old courthouse. Everyone was waiting. People whispered as they looked at the man who sat alone at the defendant's table. It was Keanu Reeves. He wore a simple dark suit, and his face looked calm but tired. It was not every day that the world's favorite actor was accused of a crime so serious it could ruin him forever. The judge sat at the bench, old and stiff, with cold eyes that seemed to enjoy the power he held. His name was Judge Harland. He had been on the bench for 30 years and had made many enemies and friends, but he liked to keep secrets. This morning, he looked at Keanu as if he were just another fool to crush under his gavel. The people in the gallery were confused. They had come because the news was everywhere. Keanu Reeves accused of fraud and perjury. Some believed it was true. Some shook their heads and said, "Not him. He is too kind, too humble." But whispers grew like weeds in the courtroom. What was the truth? The young lawyer sitting beside Keanu was named Lucas. He was fresh out of law school and looked nervous. He kept flipping through papers, his hands shaking. He whispered to Keanu, "We should ask for more time. The evidence they have, it's all twisted." Keanu leaned back and looked at Lucas with gentle eyes. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I know more than they think. Trust me. We will not ask for time." Lucas frowned. "You're not a lawyer, Keanu. They want to destroy you. The judge has friends in high places." Keanu did not answer. Instead, he looked around the room. He saw reporters, cameras hidden under coats, people pretending to be normal citizens. He knew what was happening. Someone wanted a show. They wanted to see him fall. They wanted to break him, to teach him a lesson for standing up for people who could not stand up for themselves. They did not know Keanu had spent years learning the law quietly. He had sat in classes, read books alone at night after filming, and even helped people who had no money to get justice. But he had done it quietly, without telling anyone. This was the first time the world would see the side of Keanu that no one knew. Judge Harland banged his gavel. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice sharp like broken glass. "Do you have anything to say before we begin this trial?" Keanu stood up. The courtroom went silent. He looked at the judge straight in the eye. "Yes," he said calmly. "I will represent myself." The words dropped like a bomb. Lucas gasped. The judge smirked. He thought Keanu was making a fool of himself. The crowd leaned forward. No one expected this. "You can't be serious," Judge Harlan sneered. "This is not a movie, Mr. Reeves. You think your fame will save you?" Keanu's eyes did not blink. "I don't want my fame to save me," he said. "I want the truth to save me." A woman in the back row covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. She had once met Keanu at a charity event, where he had given away his entire paycheck to help rebuild homes for families who lost everything. She remembered how he had sat with her father, an old man who was dying, just to make him laugh. "He doesn't deserve this," she whispered to her friend, the prosecution lawyer. A slick man named Mr. Cole stood up with a cruel smile. "Your Honor, this is a waste of time. Mr. Reeves is not qualified. He will only embarrass himself." Keanu stepped closer to the bench. "I passed the bar exam 3 years ago," he said, pulling out a card from his pocket. "I just never practiced officially because I believed in helping people quietly. But today, I will fight for myself." The judge's smirk faded for a moment, but then he leaned back and nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "But remember, Mr. Reeves, this court does not care for drama. Facts only." Keanu nodded. "Then let's speak the truth." The first witness was called. A man named Ethan walked to the stand, avoiding Keanu's eyes. He was an old friend, or so everyone thought. But today, Ethan sat down and began to tell a story that painted Keanu as a liar, a cheat, a man who used fake documents to gain millions for a charity that did not exist. The jury listened. Some looked shocked. The young lawyer Lucas buried his face in his hands. But Keanu just watched Ethan, his eyes calm. He noticed Ethan's trembling hands, the sweat on his brow, the way his eyes darted to Judge Harland once in a while. Keanu knew fear when he saw it. Ethan was hiding something, or someone was forcing him to lie. When Ethan finished, Keanu stood and walked to the stand. He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. Instead, he asked one question. Do you remember the letter you wrote to me last year, Ethan? Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean. Keanu turned to the court clerk. Please bring in exhibit A. Lucas, still shaking, pulled a file from the bag and handed it to the clerk. The clerk gave it to the judge. Judge Harlan's eyes narrowed as he read it. Keanu continued. This is a letter Ethan wrote, thanking me for saving his house from foreclosure, thanking me for the money I gave him to pay for his mother's surgery. He even promised to help my charity because he believed in it. Ethan's face turned pale. The courtroom buzzed. The judge banged his gavel. Silence. Keanu leaned closer to Ethan. Did you forget, Ethan, or did someone make you forget? Ethan looked like he might faint. He whispered, I'm sorry. The judge's face darkened. The prosecution lawyer stood up, shouting, Objection. This is irrelevant. Keanu turned to the jury. It is relevant, he said, because it shows Ethan was not just my friend. He was grateful, loyal, and honest until someone threatened him. Suddenly, a phone rang in the back row. People jumped. The judge's eyes burned. Turn that off. But the noise had done something. In that moment of chaos, Keanu saw the bailiff slip a note to Ethan. He caught it. A tiny piece of paper, almost invisible. Ethan's fingers shook as he opened it under the stand. Keanu leaned closer. Ethan, what did they promise you? Tears spilled down Ethan's face. He mouthed, they said they'd kill me if I didn't lie. The courtroom froze. Everyone felt the air go heavy, like a storm about to break. Judge Harlan banged his gavel again and again, his voice rising. Order, order. Keanu looked straight at the judge. His calm eyes had a new fire in them now. Your Honor, he said slowly, I move that we investigate witness tampering, threats, and corruption in this court. The judge's face turned red. He slammed his gavel one last time. This court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. As the people filed out, whispers turned into chatter. The reporters scribbled notes like mad. Lucas grabbed Keanu's arm. How did you know, Keanu? Keanu looked back at the empty stand where Ethan had sat. Sometimes you just listen, he said, and the truth whispers back. He knew this was just the beginning. The next day would bring more lies, more danger, and more secrets. But Keanu was ready. They wanted to frame him. But they had no idea they had just woken up the fighter inside him. And for the first time, the world would see that kindness and humility did not mean weakness. They meant strength no one could crush. Secrets behind the bench. Next morning, the courthouse was packed before dawn. People lined up outside the big wooden doors. Reporters whispered into microphones, hungry for every word. Some were hoping to see Keanu Reeves fall. Others came because they wanted to believe that a good man could still win against the darkness that hid in places like this. Inside, Keanu sat alone again at the defendant's table. Lucas, his young lawyer friend, leaned over with tired eyes. Keanu, I've been reading the files all night, Lucas whispered. This is bigger than I thought. There are old cases that all connected Judge Harlan, shady deals, people who went to prison without evidence. But the files are buried deep. If we push him too hard, he might shut you down before we can prove it. Keanu turned the pages Lucas had dug up. His hands were steady. We need to show the jury the pattern, he said. They need to see that what's happening to me has happened before. We need someone who will speak up. Lucas single quotes as eyes dropped. Who? No one will stand against Harlan. He has ruined lives for less. Keanu leaned back in his chair, looking around the room. He remembered the woman from the back row, the one who had covered her mouth, her eyes full of tears. Her name was Clara. She was not just any spectator. He remembered her father, Mr. Wells, a man who had lost his farm because of a case Judge Harlan ruled on. It was the same story, fake evidence, hidden deals. The judge and his friends getting richer while families like Clara's lost everything. He stood up and walked over to Clara before the judge entered. People turned their heads. Cameras clicked. Clara looked up, startled. Keanu, why are you talking to me? Keanu sat beside her. Because you know the truth, he said gently. Your father trusted me. I remember how much you fought for him. You have nothing left to lose. Clara, will you help me? Clara's hands shook. They destroyed my family, she whispered. After Daddy died, I tried to fight back. No lawyer would take my case. The judge made sure of that. Do you think he will let me speak now? Keanu leaned closer. If you speak up today, you won't be alone. Look around. People want the truth. They're tired of fear. I promise you, Clara, no one will hurt you again. We'll protect you. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. I'll do it, for Daddy. For you. Just then, the heavy doors swung open and Judge Harland walked in, his robe flowing like a dark cloud behind him. He looked at the room with cold eyes and then at Keanu sitting beside Clara. A tiny flicker of worry crossed his face. Just for a second, then it vanished. He banged his gavel. Court is now in session. The prosecution called the next witness, a banker named Mr. Aldridge. He was supposed to prove that Keanu had moved millions of dollars into a fake charity account. Aldridge stood tall, his suit perfect, his smile fake. He said all the right words, but his eyes never met Keanu's. When it was Keanu's turn to cross-examine him, he stood slowly. The entire courtroom went silent. Keanu's voice was soft but clear. Mr. Aldridge, he said, how long have you worked with Judge Harland's brother-in-law? The banker's smile cracked. I don't see how that matters. Keanu held up a paper. This document shows that you co-signed loans with him for properties that were bought using money taken from families like Clara's father. Do you deny this? The judge leaned forward, his face tightening. Mr. Reeves, I will not allow you to turn this trial into a circus. Stay on point. Keanu turned to the judge. Your Honor, the point is simple. If the witness is part of the same circle that benefits from false rulings, the jury deserves to know. The jury murmured. The judge banged his gavel. Control your courtroom. Mr. Reeves, or I will. Keanu stepped closer to the banker. Tell me, Mr. Aldridge, did you threaten Clara's father with foreclosure when he refused to sell his land to Judge Harland's friend? Mr. Aldridge's hands shook. I did what I was told. By whom? Keanu's voice was calm but strong. By people who said they were acting for the judge's circle, Aldridge whispered, his voice breaking. The room exploded with noise. People gasped. Cameras clicked like wild. The judge's gavel slammed again and again. But the sound could not stop the truth that had just slipped out. Outside, the reporters texted their editors. Headlines were already forming. Banker admits to judge's secret deals. Judge Harland's face was a mask of rage. He looked at Keanu like he wanted to burn him alive. This is outrageous, he snarled. Mr. Reeves, you will not bring up my family again in this courtroom. Keanu turned back to Clara. Stand up, he said softly. Clara stood. She was trembling, but she did not look away when the judge glared at her. Your Honor, she said, her voice breaking but steady. My father died because of you. You took his land. You took his pride. And when he fought back, you ruined him. I have the papers. I kept them all. I am ready to testify. The judge's lips tightened into a thin line. Bailiff, remove her from the court. But the bailiff did not move. The people in the gallery started shouting. Let her speak. Let her speak. Lucas jumped up, his young voice strong for once. Your Honor, you can't silence a witness with relevant evidence. The judge stood up. His robe flapped like a black flag. This trial is adjourned until further notice. But Keanu stepped forward. He looked at every face in that room. The jury, the reporters, the scared clerks. This is what corruption looks like, he said. When the truth tries to speak, they shut the doors. But the truth doesn't. Stay locked forever. Tomorrow, we bring everything. Tomorrow, we show them all. The people cheered. The judge stormed out, his robe swirling behind him like a shadow trying to run from the light. As Keanu and Clara walked out of the courtroom side by side, the sun hit their faces. People reached out to touch his arm, to thank him, to give him hope. Lucas ran to catch up, papers flying from his bag. Keanu, Lucas said breathlessly. They'll come after you now. You know that, right? Keanu nodded, looking at the sky. Let them come, he said. I've been ready my whole life. And somewhere deep inside the old courthouse, Judge Harland made a quiet phone call that would change everything before the next dawn. The midnight deal night fell heavy on the city. Rain tapped against the windows of Keanu's small rented apartment. Inside, Lucas sat on the floor, surrounded by piles of old files, yellowed papers, and news clippings. Clara sat at the table, sorting documents she had saved for years. Keanu stood by the window, staring out at the street below, watching shadows move under the street lights. Lucas looked up, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Keanu, I found something," he said, his voice raw. "It's not just Clara's family. There are at least 8 other families who lost everything because of forged signatures and fake evidence. It all points back to Judge Harland and his friends." Keanu turned and walked over, kneeling beside Lucas. He picked up a photo of an old man standing in front of a broken farmhouse. "Who is he, Mr. Delgado?" Clara answered softly. "He died last year. His daughter tried to sue, but the case was thrown out." "Same judge." Keanu nodded. "We need her. Do you know where she is?" Clara hesitated. "She moved away after her father died. She was scared. She said people were following her, threatening her." Keanu's single quotes, eyes darkened. "Then we find her. We protect her." A sudden knock at the door made everyone freeze. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Lucas stood up slowly, fists clenched. Keanu motioned them to stay back and opened the door himself. A tall man in a dark coat stood there. His face was half hidden under the brim of his hat. He spoke in a low voice. "Mr. Reeves, I need to speak with you." "Alone." Keanu stepped aside. "Come in," he said calmly. Clara and Lucas stared, their fear obvious. The man pulled off his hat. His face was lined and tired, but his eyes were sharp. "My name is Raymond. I work inside the courthouse," he said. "I'm risking everything just by standing here." Keanu studied him. "Why are you here?" Raymond glanced at Clara and Lucas, then back at Keanu. "Because you need to know what's coming. Judge Harland has already filed for an emergency hearing tomorrow. He plans to dismiss your evidence, discredit Clara, and have you charged with contempt. He has people ready to testify that you forged the papers you plan to show." Lucas threw his hands up. "This is insane. How does he control so many people?" Raymond looked at him sadly. "Fear, money, secrets. He keeps files on everyone, their debts, their sins, their weaknesses. If you don't play along, you lose everything, or worse." Keanu's single quotes, eyes stayed calm. "Why tell me this now?" Raymond's hands trembled as he pulled out an envelope. "Because I can't watch innocent people suffer anymore. Inside this envelope are copies of documents that prove Judge Harland has offshore accounts, bribes, property bought under fake names. It's not everything, but it's enough to make him panic." Clara leaned forward. "Why should we trust you?" Raymond looked at her with tired eyes. "Because I lost my brother to this man. He was a lawyer who tried to stand up to Harland. He died in a car accident that wasn't an accident." The room fell silent. Keanu reached out and took the envelope. He placed a hand on Raymond's shoulder. "Thank you. You did the right thing." Raymond stepped back. "You need to be careful. If he senses you have this, he'll come after you tonight." "Not tomorrow." Keanu nodded. "We're ready." After Raymond left, Clara sank into a chair. "What do we do now?" Keanu opened the envelope. The papers inside felt heavy, as if each one carried the weight of every family Judge Harland had ever destroyed. "We prepare," he said quietly. "We make copies. We give them to the press. We hide them in places he can't touch." Lucas sat down beside him, a spark of courage growing in his eyes. "And tomorrow?" Keanu looked at them both, his voice steady. "Tomorrow, we face him. But tonight we don't sleep. Tonight we make sure the truth is louder than his lies." They worked through the night. Clara called Mr. Delgado's daughter, speaking in hushed words, convincing her to come back and testify. Lucas printed copies of the files, hiding them in different bags. Keanu typed out statements for the press, every word simple and clear, so the truth could not be twisted. But as dawn crept in, Lucas looked up, his face pale. "Keanu," he whispered, "someone's outside." Keanu walked to the window. Parked across the street was a black car with tinted windows. 2 men sat inside, staring up at the apartment. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "They found us." Keanu turned to them, his eyes calm but fierce. "Pack everything. We're leaving. Where will we go? Lucas asked. Somewhere they can't touch. U.S., Keanu said. The people will protect us now. We're not alone anymore. As they gathered the papers and stuffed them into bags, the black car engine rumbled to life. Its headlights cut through the early dawn, waiting like a wolf in the dark. Keanu took one last look around the tiny apartment, the files, the photos of families torn apart, the stacks of truth they were about to carry into the lion's den. He breathed in deeply. No matter what happens, he whispered to himself, we will not bend. We will not break. Outside, the city waited, unaware that before the sun would set again, it would witness a fight for justice that no one could have imagined. And Judge Harland, sitting in his grand house, was already on the phone, giving orders that would push Keanu Reeves to the edge of everything he had ever believed. The trap in the hallway courthouse steps were crowded by the time Keanu, Clara, and Lucas arrived the next morning. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes from cameras burst like tiny explosions, and people reached out just to touch Keanu's arm as he walked by. In his hand, he carried a simple brown folder. Inside were the copies of evidence Raymond had given him. In his pocket, he had hidden a small flash drive. The truth now had layers like armor. Lucas looked around, breathing fast. They're all watching, he whispered. What if they grab the folder? Keanu kept walking, steady and calm. They can grab the folder, he said softly, but they can't grab what's already out there. He had stayed up all night sending copies to trusted reporters, mailing others to people he knew he could count on. If anything happened to him today, the story would break wide open. The judge could no longer hide in the shadows. Inside, the air felt heavy. It smelled of old wood, fear, and secrets. Judge Harlan sat at the bench, his robe perfect, his face carved from stone, but his eyes twitched as Keanu walked in. He knew. He just didn't know everything. The first hour of the hearing went like a bad dream. The prosecution threw wild claims at Keanu, that he had forged the new documents, that Clara was unstable, that Raymond was a liar and probably bribed. Every word was a dagger aimed at making the jury doubt. When Clara took the stand, she held her father's papers in her trembling hands. Her voice cracked, but she did not look away from the jury. My father was an honest man, she said. They took everything from him. This is not just about money. It's about a man who could not fight back because the judge made sure he had no chance. The courtroom was silent except for the scratching of pens on notepads. The jury watched her closely. Some of them nodded, but Judge Harland leaned forward, his eyes cold slits. Miss Wells, he said, his voice dripping with fake kindness. Are you aware you can be charged with perjury if you lie under oath? Clara swallowed. Her hands shook. Keanu stood up. Your Honor, he said firmly, she is not lying. If you want to threaten someone, threaten me. The judge smirked. Don't worry, Mr. Reeves. Your turn is coming. The bailiff called the next witness. Everyone turned. As a new figure walked in, Raymond. He looked different now, pale and tired, as if he hadn't slept since the night he gave Keanu the files. He sat down, refusing to meet Keanu's eyes. Keanu felt his gut twist. Something was wrong. He leaned toward Lucas. Why does he look like that? Lucas shook his head, helpless. I don't know. Maybe he's scared. The prosecutor stood and paced like a wolf circling prey. Mr. Raymond, he said, loud enough for every camera to hear. Is it true you gave Mr. Reeves these so-called secret documents? Raymond's eyes darted to the judge. He nodded, barely. Yes. And where did you get these documents? Raymond's voice was a whisper. I found them. In old files. The prosecutor leaned in. Or did Mr. Reeves pay you to fake them? Keanu shot up. Objection, overruled. The judge snapped. Too fast. The prosecutor pressed on. Raymond, he said, almost smiling. Did you meet Mr. Reeves secretly in exchange for money? Silence choked the room. Raymond's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Keanu for the first time. I'm sorry, he whispered. They have my daughter. They said they'd kill her. The words hit Keanu like a punch. Lucas grabbed his arm. Clara gasped. People in the gallery murmured, some shouting, this is not fair. Judge Harlan banged his gavel so hard it sounded like thunder. Order, the prosecutor turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you see, this entire defense is a lie paid for by a desperate man trying to save his own skin. Keanu's hands curled into fists. He wanted to shout, but he knew rage would only feed. The judge's plan. He looked at Raymond, whose face crumbled with shame. It's okay, Keanu mouthed. They won't hurt her. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Reeves, he said, voice sharp, your witness is compromised. Your evidence is questionable. Do you have anything real to say before I dismiss this nonsense and move to sentencing? The room was spinning, but Keanu forced himself to breathe. He reached into his pocket, feeling the tiny flash drive. Yes, Your Honor, he said, voice steady. I have something to say. He stepped to the center of the courtroom, looking at every face, the jury, the reporters, Clara, Lucas, Raymond, who sobbed into his hands. I knew they would come for us. I knew they would threaten, twist, lie. They want you to believe that when good people stand up, they get crushed. But look at what they're afraid of, truth. Why would they break Raymond if he were lying? Why threaten his child if they had nothing to hide? The judge slammed his gavel again. You're grandstanding, Mr. Reeves. This is not Hollywood. Keanu turned slowly, meeting the judge's eyes. No, he said, calm like a mountain. This is real life. And in real life, people are tired of being scared. He pulled the flash drive from his pocket and held it up. This contains audio and video from security cameras inside the courthouse offices. Cameras they forgot were still running. It shows conversations, threats, payments. It shows everything. Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor lunged forward. That's illegal evidence. Keanu shook his head. It's the truth. Judge Harlan's face turned purple. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. Bailiff, seize that drive. But the people in the gallery rose to their feet, blocking the aisle. Clara ran forward, grabbing Keanu's hand. Lucas stood by his side, voice shaking but strong. No more fear. Lucas shouted, we want the truth. The judge banged his gavel until the sound cracked through the room, but no one sat down. People started chanting, truth, truth, truth. In that moment, Keanu saw it, the thing no power could silence. A single person might be afraid, but people, together, could not be broken. Judge Harlan turned to the guards at the door. Lock them up, every one of them. But the guards did not move. They looked at each other, at the chanting crowd, at the jury who now stared at the judge with disgust. They lowered their hands and stepped back. Keanu looked at Clara, then at Lucas. We're not done, he whispered. This is just the beginning. And in the back row, Raymond sat up, wiping his tears. He knew what he had to do next, even if it cost him everything. The confession and the false courtroom was a storm of voices. People shouted. Some cried, and others chanted for the truth like their voices could break the walls. Outside the courthouse, more people gathered. News vans parked in every empty space, broadcasting what was happening inside. The whole city now knew something was wrong. And inside, Judge Harlan felt the ground under him crack. Keanu stood in the center of it all, still holding the tiny flash drive like it was a torch in the dark. Clara squeezed his arm. Lucas stood behind him, breathing hard, eyes wild with hope and fear all mixed together. The judge slammed his gavel so many times that the wood split at the edge. This court is out of order. Mr. Reeves, you are out of order. But the guards did not move to arrest Keanu. They stood frozen, looking at each other. Uncertain now, the jury sat stiff in their seats, whispering among themselves. They could feel the lies cracking apart like old glass. Keanu looked at Raymond, who was still in the witness chair. His eyes were red and puffy. He looked so small and broken, but then something changed. He looked up, straight at Judge Harlan, his mouth trembling. Your Honor, Raymond said, his voice rough. May I speak? The judge glared at him. You have done enough. You are dismissed. Raymond shook his head. No, he said louder. I won't lie anymore. People fell silent. It was like the room took one deep breath together. Clara whispered, oh my God, he's going to do it. Raymond stood up, gripping the edge of the stand so hard his knuckles turned white. I lied yesterday, he said, voice shaking, but strong enough to reach the back row. They made me lie. They showed me photos of my daughter at school, told me they would hurt her if I didn't change my story. But it's all true. Every paper Keanu has is real. I copied them myself. I saw Judge Harlan's men take money, forge signatures, throw good people in jail for money, and land. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, fighting a wave of relief. He looked at Raymond and nodded slowly. "Thank you," he mouthed. The judge's face turned red, then pale. "Bailiff, remove this witness." The bailiff didn't move. He looked at the people, then at Keanu, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, maybe we should let him finish." The judge's lip curled. "You worthless," but Raymond's voice cut through him. "I have recordings," he said. "Audio files. Secret meetings in the judge's chambers. They're all copied to the cloud. I sent them to the press an hour ago. If anything happens to me or my daughter, they'll release everything." Outside, the chanting grew louder. The doors opened and people poured in. More reporters, more ordinary people who had once been too afraid to stand up. They held their phones up, recording every word. The prosecutor tried to stand, his face white as chalk. "Your Honor, this is a setup. These people are criminals." Keanu stepped forward, calm but sharp like a blade. "Who is the criminal? The man who gives families a chance to speak, or the men who steal from them and ruin their lives?" Lucas opened his briefcase and pulled out more papers. "These are affidavits from other families," he said, loud so everyone could hear. "They're ready to testify. They want their voices heard." Judge Harlan's hands shook. He looked at the jury, at the guards, at the sea of people blocking every exit. He knew he was losing. He knew the tide had turned. His voice came out like a hiss. "None of this will stand up in court. You think you're heroes. You're finished. All of you." Keanu stepped so close to the bench that the judge had to look straight into his eyes. "No." Keanu said softly, "We're not finished. We're free." He plugged the flash drive into the court screen. The big monitor behind the judge flickered. On, a video played. It showed Judge Harlan in his private office, counting stacks of money, handing out envelopes to men with hidden faces. His voice echoed in the room, clear as day. "Make sure that old fool signs. If not, we'll find another way to get that land." Gasps. Some people covered their mouths. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Lucas slammed his fist on the table. "There it is." The judge lunged at the monitor like he could rip the truth from the wall. "Turn that off. That's stolen." The jury foreman stood up, voice strong. "Your Honor, you are under investigation now. We request this trial be suspended and the federal authorities be called in immediately." People cheered. The guards stepped forward. But not for Keanu. For the judge. Two of them took his arms. The judge shouted, spit flying, his robe flapping like a broken flag. "You think you've won? You think people like you matter? You're nothing without me." Keanu looked at him, eyes soft but steady. "Power is nothing without people to fear it," he said. Raymond walked over, head high now. "My daughter is safe," he said to Keanu. "You kept your promise." Clara hugged Keanu, sobbing into his shoulder. "My father can rest now," she whispered. "They can't hurt us anymore." Lucas stood beside them, his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. "The press has it all, every file. They're putting it on TV right now." Outside, the crowd roared like a wave breaking against stone. The doors opened wider and sunlight poured in, warm and golden on faces that had once bowed in fear. Keanu took a deep breath. The fight was not over. There would be appeals, new judges, more hearings. But the biggest wall had cracked today, and in its place, people found their voices again. As the guards led Judge Harlan away in handcuffs, the people parted, silent, watching the man who once held their lives in his fists, now powerless and small. And Keanu, the man they had tried to frame and break, stood taller than ever, surrounded by the same people he had fought for, and who had fought for him too. The promise that Echo West courthouse steps were crowded again. But this time people were not afraid. They stood side by side, old farmers, single mothers, workers, students, reporters, people who once thought they were too small to stand up to power. Now they watched as the doors opened, and the man who tried to silence them was let out in chains. Judge Harlan's eyes darted around like a cornered animal, but there was no place left to hide. The world had seen him for what he was. Keanu walked out behind him, Clara by his side, Lucas just a step away. Raymond followed, holding his daughter's hand tightly. The press shouted questions, cameras flashed, but people didn't need more proof. They had seen enough. Clara turned to Keanu, tears in her eyes, but a small smile on her lips. "My father would be so proud," she said. "You gave him back his honor." Keanu shook his head softly. "You did that," he said. "You spoke when it was hardest. You didn't give up." Lucas stepped forward, his tie crooked, hair a mess from days without sleep. "The governor's office called," he said, a little out of breath. "They're opening a new investigation. Every family Harland hurt will get a chance to tell their story. They asked if you'd help lead the hearings." Keanu looked at the courthouse behind him. Its walls still held old secrets, but today they were cracked wide open. "I will help," he said, "but it's not about me. It's about all of you. It's about teaching people they can stand together." A young boy stepped forward from the crowd, no older than 10. He held out a tiny piece of paper. "Mr. Keanu," he said shyly, "my mom says you're a hero. Will you sign this?" Keanu knelt down, his eyes warm and gentle. "What's your name?" "Ben," the boy whispered. Keanu signed the paper carefully, then handed it back. "Ben," he said, "never forget, being kind is not weak. Standing up for others is not foolish. It's the strongest thing you can do." People around them wiped tears from their eyes. For years, they had seen heroes only in movies. Today, they saw one for real, not because he fought with fists, but because he fought with truth and kindness that no lie could kill. Raymond looked at Keanu, his face lighter now that the fear was gone. "What will you do now?" Keanu stood, breathing in the morning air. "First, I'm going to rest," he said, a tired smile tugging at his lips. "Then I'll help rebuild what he destroyed. These families deserve more than just justice. They deserve a new start." Lucas laughed softly. And after that, Keanu looked at the crowd, the people holding signs that said truth wins and no more fear. He saw Clara standing taller than ever. He saw Raymond hugging his daughter tight. He saw Ben grinning, his tiny paper clutched in his hand like treasure. After that, Keanu said, his voice quiet but strong, "Maybe I'll go back to making movies, but I'll never stop fighting for people who need it, because they showed me. You showed me that one voice can change the world when it's not alone." The reporters stepped closer, their cameras capturing every word. Somewhere a young journalist, once told to keep quiet about powerful people, whispered to herself, "This is the story that will change everything." As the sun rose higher, the people began to sing. It was not a song anyone had practiced, just voices, raw and real, rising together. It was a promise that no judge, no corrupt hand, no threat could ever crush again. Keanu stood on the steps, looking at the old courthouse that had once been a cage, but now felt like a bridge to something better. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the sun and the voices wash over him. "Let them try to silence us again," he thought. "We know how to stand now." And as the people around him held hands and lifted their heads, Keanu Reeves, the man they tried to frame, the man they thought they could break, stood taller than ever. Not just a hero in a story, but proof that when the truth comes, no lie can stand against it for long.